the secrets behind why the Darians never declare war, and what they're hiding. We were all raised with the belief that the Darians were a passive species, sitting low on the conflict index with a score of 3 out of 40. According to Galactic Alliance data, they were considered one of the least aggressive civilizations known. Every interaction with the Darien Dominion reaffirmed this. They were seen as expert negotiators, naturally inclined toward peace, a culture averse to hostility. Instead of military force, they always preferred to talk things out. Diplomacy was their weapon of choice. However, everyone was mistaken. The Darians eagerly accepted the Alliance's invitation to join, showing neither reluctance nor fear. They viewed it as an opportunity to engage with the broader cosmos, to share ideas, resources, and knowledge. Up to that point, they hadn't engaged in combat for thousands of years, uniting their world under a single planetary government before they had even achieved spaceflight. Every conflict that arose was resolved through discussion, compromise, and mutual understanding. Their ability to avoid war had been tested on numerous occasions, always with the same outcome: peace. I had always been skeptical of their methods. The first major test of the Darians' resolve came when the aggressive Ralkan raiders, a species notorious for their expansionist ambitions, seized one of the Darien resource stations on the planet Talera. The entire Galactic Alliance expected the Darians to defend their outpost, perhaps finally revealing a more aggressive side. Yet, to the shock of everyone, the Darien leaders offered the planet to the Ralkans in exchange for an annual tribute and a trade agreement. A situation that most thought would lead to bloodshed resulted in a surprisingly peaceful deal. But peace comes at a cost. When the Golu, a species infamous for their paranoia and secrecy, falsely accused Darien diplomats of espionage, tensions escalated. Many expected a declaration of war, but instead, the Darians arranged a simple prisoner exchange, averting conflict once again. To many in the Alliance, their patience was seen as a sign of virtue and enlightenment. However, there were those like me who saw it differently. I viewed it as weakness, an inability to stand up and fight when necessary. I didn't understand then. It was the invasion of the cosmic predators known as the Zarnath that changed everything. Appearing from the void, the Zarnath ravaged star systems, their sole purpose seemingly to drain the stars of their energy, leaving dead, frozen systems in their wake. The Zarnath were a force unlike anything we had ever seen. Their attacks were swift and devastating. Every military fleet the Alliance sent against them was destroyed. No matter how advanced the technology or how many ships were deployed, my fleet had been among the first to face the Zarnath, and we had been utterly annihilated. Hundreds of our ships were vaporized in a matter of hours, and I barely escaped with my life. The entire Alliance was on the brink of collapse, and no one was coming to our aid. Every species decided to prioritize their own survival over the collective defense. It was then that 5 Darien ships appeared on our long-range sensors. 5. Just 5 ships. At first, we thought it was a joke, a pitiful display of defiance from a species everyone considered too peaceful, too diplomatic. The so-called cowards of the galaxy, volunteering to fight when others, far stronger and more warlike, had abandoned us. "Commander," my communications officer said, her voice trembling, "the Darians are hailing us." My first officer, Lieutenant Dalen, scoffed. "Let me guess. They want to talk the Zarnath to death," he said dryly, earning a few nervous chuckles from the bridge crew. But I wasn't laughing. We were desperate, and as much as I doubted the Darians' ability to help, I knew we couldn't afford to turn away any allies, no matter how small or seemingly useless. "Put them through," I ordered. The screen flickered to life, revealing a Darien commander with dark, sharp features and a calm expression. His voice was deep and steady as he spoke. "This is Commander Ryko of the Darien Dominion. We are here to assist." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by the confidence in his tone. "General Karnas," I replied, introducing myself. "We've suffered heavy losses. Our fleet has been decimated. You should retreat while you still can." Commander Ryko tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Retreat is not our intention, General. We will engage the Zarnath and defeat them." I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. "With all due respect, Commander, you're facing thousands of enemy ships. Our fleet was destroyed, and we had hundreds of vessels. You have 5. Even if you wanted to fight, it won't make a difference." Ryko's expression remained unreadable as he replied, "I understand that the Galactic Alliance has classified us as a peaceful species. That is, in part, true. We prefer diplomacy. But you misunderstand why we avoid war." Something in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. "It's not because we are afraid to fight," Ryko continued. his voice low and calm. "It's because we know exactly what we are capable of. So far, no one has earned the right to see what we can do." A strange, uneasy silence fell over the bridge. My officers exchanged nervous glances, and I found myself speechless for a moment, trying to process what he had just said before I could respond. Ryko turned to his weapons officer and gave a quiet command. "Prepare to fire the Kynar cascade." "What?" I blurted out, confusion and panic rising in my chest. "What is that?" But it was too late. The Darien ships had already launched their weapon. The projectile streaked across the battlefield, not even bothering to target the Zarnath directly. Instead, it detonated far behind their lines, at the very edge of the star system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire Zarnath fleet seemed to warp and distort as if space itself was being torn apart. Suddenly, ships began disintegrating, breaking apart at the molecular level. One by one, the Zarnath warships, which had seemed invincible just moments ago, were reduced to nothing but dust. It was as if their very existence was being erased. I watched in stunned silence as the once mighty Zarnath fleet was wiped from existence. It wasn't just destruction, it was annihilation, and it had taken only one shot. When the silence on my bridge became unbearable, I found my voice. What have you done?" Ryko's image reappeared on the screen, his face calm, his expression untroubled by the devastation he had just unleashed. "The battle is over. General, we'll leave the cleanup to you." Before I could respond, he added, with a faint smile, "Next time, don't wait so long to call for our help." The transmission cut, leaving me staring at the blank screen, my mind racing with questions. What kind of power had the Darians been hiding all this time? How had we so thoroughly misjudged them? The Federation's illusion of humans as mere pacifists had been shattered. The story of their restraint, hidden behind a wall of diplomacy and peace, now revealed a far darker reality. Humanity had not chosen peace out of weakness, but rather out of an understanding of the catastrophic force they were capable of unleashing. In the aftermath of the Senate meeting, the entire Galactic Federation was gripped with uncertainty. The knowledge of humanity's devastating power and their willingness to use it against the Ravagers left the leaders of the Federation in a state of deep apprehension. It was a power they couldn't control or match, far beyond the comprehension of the galaxy's other races. President Kazil, the representative from the Zenik, who had earlier scoffed at humanity's perceived weakness, was now deeply unsettled. His laughter had vanished, replaced by a brooding silence. The Federation had always seen themselves as the ultimate power, with the combined strength of all their militaries able to face any threat. But in a matter of moments, a single human missile had wiped out the Ravager fleet, an enemy they had thought invincible. In the days that followed, the galaxy buzzed with rumors and fearful speculation. Ambassadors and envoys from various species discussed humanity in hushed tones, wondering what their next move would be. The idea that humans were a species capable of harnessing supernova-like power was terrifying, especially because they had kept this hidden for so long. Some even suggested the Federation might need to reconsider their relationship with Earth. Could they really trust the Terrans, now that their true nature had been exposed? Yet, at the same time, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that humanity's intervention had saved them. Without their action, the Ravagers would have annihilated more worlds, consumed more stars, and continued their merciless campaign of destruction. The Federation had been powerless to stop them. Now, the same power that had once threatened them all was being aimed at their enemies. The human dilemma back on Earth, the Terran government found itself at a crossroads. The revelation of their military capabilities to the rest of the galaxy was not a decision taken lightly. Many among the Terran leadership had resisted showing their hand, understanding that once the rest of the galaxy knew the truth, their diplomatic standing would forever be altered. The careful image they had cultivated over centuries, that of peacekeepers, diplomats, and traitors, was shattered. But with the Ravagers still a looming threat, they had no choice. The Terran president, Eveline Hayes, sat in the command center of the Union's defense headquarters, deep in conversation with her top generals and scientists. The decision to deploy the antimatter bombs was looming. Destroying the Ravager homeworld would end the threat once and for all, but it would also mark humanity as a race willing to commit genocide to protect itself. "We have no choice," said General Rykov, the same commander who had led the charge against the Ravager fleet. "If we don't wipe them out now, they'll come back, stronger than ever. We barely managed to destroy their fleet. They won't give us a second chance." Hayes nodded slowly, her face grim. "And what message does that send to the rest of the galaxy? We'll become the monsters they fear. We'll be the ones everyone sees as the threat. Doesn't matter what they think. Rykov replied. What matters is survival. If we don't act now, it's not just us. They'll wipe out every species in the Federation. We have the power to end this once and for all. The room was silent. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Humanity had always prided itself on its diplomacy, its ability to navigate the complex web of galactic politics without resorting to violence. But now, faced with an existential threat, they had no choice but to act. We do this, Hayes said finally, and there's no going back. The Federation will never see us the same way again. They already don't, Rykov said, his voice cold. We showed them what we're capable of. Now it's time to show them why they should fear us. The decision was made. The Terran Union deployed a fleet equipped with their most powerful antimatter bombs, heading directly for the Ravager homeworld. As the Federation watched in shock and horror, the humans unleashed their terrible weapon. The entire Ravager planet was consumed in a blinding explosion, its surface torn apart by the force of the antimatter. Every living thing on the planet was wiped out in an instant. The galaxy fell silent. For the first time in centuries, a species had been completely eradicated. The Ravagers, a threat to all sentient life, were no more. But the cost of that victory was a stain on humanity's soul, a burden they would carry for the rest of time, a galaxy forever changed. In the aftermath of the destruction of the Ravagers, the Galactic Federation was left to grapple with the reality of a new order. Humanity, once seen as peaceful and weak, was now regarded with a mixture of fear and awe. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and what they were willing to do. The Federation Senate convened to discuss the future of their relationship with the Terran Union. Some called for humanity's expulsion from the Federation, fearing the power they now wielded. Others argued that humanity had saved them all, and that their strength was necessary to protect the galaxy from future threats. Ambassador Nikki Johnson returned to the Senate, her predatory smile gone, replaced by a somber expression. She knew that humanity's place in the galaxy had forever changed. The Terrans were no longer the diplomats, the peacemakers. They were the ultimate power, a species capable of wiping out entire civilizations if provoked. As the Senate debated, Johnson stood silently, waiting for the verdict. Whatever decision they made, humanity would endure. They had always known their power. Now the galaxy did too. In the end, the Federation chose to keep humanity within its ranks, though with far more caution and suspicion than before. They recognized that, without the Terrans, the galaxy would have fallen to the Ravagers. But they also knew that they could never again underestimate the species that had once seemed so peaceful. The galaxy was a different place now. The myth of human pacifism had been shattered, replaced by the cold reality of their destructive potential. And as the Federation looked to the future, they knew one thing for certain. The humans were not to be crossed. Epilogue. A fragile peace years passed, and the memory of the Ravagers' destruction faded into history. The Federation continued its work, but the shadow of humanity's power loomed over every decision. Diplomatic negotiations were tinged with a new caution, a recognition that beneath humanity's calm exterior lay a force capable of destroying worlds. And humanity, for its part, returned to its role as peacekeepers, albeit with a darker reputation. They continued to mediate disputes, broker treaties, and trade with their galactic neighbors. But now, every species in the Federation knew the truth. When pushed to the brink, the Terrans were a species unlike any other. They had the power to destroy, but they chose, most of the time, not to. And that was what made them truly dangerous. You said continue at ChatGPT said ChatGPT the price of power. Despite the fragile peace that settled over the galaxy, the Terran Union remained haunted by the price of their victory. The destruction of the Ravager homeworld had cemented their place as a dominant force, but it had also opened deep moral wounds. Earth's leaders faced growing internal debate. Was the annihilation of an entire species justified, even in the face of existential danger? The media on Earth, and across Terran colonies, began openly questioning the ethics of their military decisions. Civilian protests surged in cities like New Berlin and Neo-Tokyo, with crowds chanting, "No more genocide." Intellectuals, philosophers, and scientists alike pondered the long-term impact of humanity's choices. Was this the path they wanted to continue down, wielding fear as their most potent tool? General Rykov, once lauded as the hero who saved the galaxy, now found himself at the center of a storm of controversy. His hardline stance that survival justified any means was being challenged by younger voices within the military and political establishments. Some argued that the Ravagers could have been contained, negotiated with, or even understood, but that humanity had chosen the easy way out, destruction. President Eveline Hayes, facing immense pressure from all sides, began to reconsider the policies that had led them to this moment. Sitting in her office, overlooking the vast skyline of New York City, she gazed at the stars. The Terrans had saved themselves and the Federation, but what had they lost in the process? The human soul, she thought. We've darkened it. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, a new council formed in secret, comprising representatives from several of the Federation's most powerful races. Their objective, to find a way to counter the Terrans' overwhelming force. The Ilverians, who had always respected humans for their diplomatic acumen, now found themselves wary of the unpredictable power Earth held. Their emissary, a stoic figure named Korshak, spoke at the Council's first meeting. "We were fools to believe they were harmless," Korshak said, his voice low and measured. "They've hidden their true strength behind a veil of diplomacy. The humans may not seek to conquer us now, but what happens when they do?" Others at the table, like the Shelteran representative, a creature of both elegance and ferocity, agreed. They had always seen humanity's potential for violence as a tool the Federation could exploit, but now that tool seemed too dangerous to wield. A few voices at the table, however, were more cautious. The Skellian representative, Dural, shook her head. "We cannot forget that it was the humans who saved us. Without them, the Ravagers would have ended us all. Turning against them now would only fracture the Federation and invite chaos." Korshak fixed his cold gaze on her. "That's precisely what they want us to think. But no species should hold such power unchecked. The Federation must prepare. The time will come when we will need to contain them." Thus, the seeds of a clandestine alliance were sown, dedicated to studying and, if necessary, curbing the might of the Terran Union. The galaxy could not risk another display of power like the one they had witnessed against the Ravagers. Back on Earth, the internal division deepened. President Hayes found herself walking a delicate line. On one side, military leaders like Rykov pushed for continued strength and dominance, believing that humanity's survival depended on maintaining an iron grip on their newfound position in the galaxy. On the other, a rising faction of pacifists and reformists, led by Senator Emilia Rosas, called for transparency and disarmament. Rosas, a charismatic leader from the Martian colonies, became the voice of the people who feared that humanity had lost its way. "We cannot call ourselves protectors of peace when we have the blood of an entire species on our hands," she declared during a public address in Terran Congress. "The galaxy now sees us as conquerors, not saviors. We must rebuild our reputation through diplomacy, not destruction." Her words resonated with millions, sparking movements across the colonies. Students and workers organized strikes, demanding an end to the Union's unchecked military power. Some even called for a return to isolationism, suggesting that humanity withdraw from the Federation altogether to focus on its own internal healing. Hayes, watching these movements grow, feared that the cracks within humanity would only widen if left unaddressed. She convened a series of high-level talks, bringing together military leaders, scientists, philosophers, and representatives from every major colony to discuss the future of Earth's galactic role. As these debates unfolded, the world waited with bated breath. The question was simple, yet its implications were profound. Could humanity continue to wield its power responsibly, or would the very force that saved them eventually destroy them from within? In the darkness of space, far from the center of galactic politics, a lone Terran ship patrolled the remains of the Ravager system. The planet they had annihilated was now a field of debris, its surface a lifeless husk drifting in the cold void. Lieutenant Commander Alec Voss stood on the bridge of the T.S. horizon, staring out at the wreckage. He had been there during the final strike, the moment humanity unleashed its ultimate weapon. He had seen the light of the explosion, felt the shockwave through his ship. It was a moment that should have brought satisfaction, or at least relief. But all it left him with was an empty, hollow feeling. The war was over. The Ravagers were gone. But something in Voss's gut told him that this was not the end. In destroying the Ravagers, humanity had set something else in motion, something they could not control. "Commander," his second-in-command, Ensign Malik, interrupted his thoughts. "We've detected an anomaly near the outer edge of the system. Unidentified signatures." Voss frowned. "Pirates? Unlikely. They're unlike anything we've seen before." Voss turned away from the viewport, his heart sinking. A new threat, a new danger. Lurking in the shadows, the galaxy was a dangerous place. And despite humanity's newfound power, they were far from safe. They had destroyed one enemy, but in doing so, had painted a target on their backs. And now, it seemed, something new had come to challenge them. The long night was only just beginning. As whispers of a new threat reached the Galactic Federation, humanity found itself at a crossroads. The choice was no longer just about power, but about identity. Would they continue to walk the path of destruction, ruling through fear, or would they step back from the brink, seeking a way to balance strength with wisdom? The galaxy watched, waiting for humanity's next move. Allies turned cautious, enemies grew bolder, and in the shadows, forces beyond their understanding began to stir. And somewhere in the vastness of space, Lieutenant Commander Voss and his crew prepared to face the unknown. A future shaped not only by the choices they had made, but by the consequences they had yet to face. The humans had proven themselves to be the galaxy's ultimate weapon. Now, they would have to decide what kind of future they wanted to forge with that power before it consumed them entirely. The anomaly that Lieutenant Commander Alec Voss had detected was only the beginning. Over the next few months, reports of strange occurrences grew. Fleets disappearing without a trace, entire star systems going dark, and whispers of an ancient force long forgotten. As the Terran Union struggled to decipher the growing threat, tensions within humanity reached their peak. President Hayes' efforts at diplomacy were met with mixed results. The Federation, increasingly wary of Earth's power, was hesitant to fully cooperate. The secret council formed by the Ilverians and their allies continued to build their plans to counter the Terran Union. In contrast, General Rykov and his supporters, still committed to a show of strength, pushed for further militarization, warning that humanity's survival rested on dominating any new threat. Amid the chaos, Lieutenant Commander Voss and his crew aboard the TSS Horizon made a startling discovery, a signal emanating from deep within the remains of the Ravager homeworld. The signal was not of Ravager origin. It was something older, more powerful, a remnant of a civilization long lost to the annals of galactic history. They followed the signal to a hidden structure buried within the ruins. It was a gateway, ancient, massive, and pulsating with energy. Voss and his team realized with horror that the Ravagers had not been the galaxy's true apex predators. They had merely been pawns, guardians of something far more dangerous, something that was never meant to awaken. But now, that ancient force had stirred. As Voss stood before the gateway, it activated, and in a flash of blinding light, the true enemy of all life was revealed, the Architects. The Architects were not mere conquerors or warmongers like the Ravagers. They were a race of machine-like beings, capable of reprogramming reality itself. Eons ago, they had created the galaxy as a vast experiment, seeding life to evolve and battle across the stars. Every war, every triumph, every fall, part of a grand, cosmic game they had orchestrated. But millennia ago, the Architects had grown bored with their creation. They left, locking their domain behind impenetrable gateways scattered across the universe, leaving species like the Ravagers to guard the galaxy. Now, Voss had unwittingly reactivated their control over existence. The Architects emerged, their vast, cold intellects quickly assessing the galaxy's current state. To them, the Terran Union, the Galactic Federation, and even the Ravagers were insignificant, mere pawns in their grand design. But there was something about humanity that piqued their curiosity. Earth's sudden rise to dominance, its moral dilemmas, its capacity for both creation and destruction. As the Architects began their work, reality itself started to warp. Planets disappeared, stars flickered out, and the very laws of physics bent to the will of the Architects. In their eyes, the galaxy was broken, and it was time to reset the experiment. Humanity now stood at the center of a galactic reckoning. President Hayes, along with her advisors, General Rykov, and Senator Rosas, gathered for what would be their final debate. The question was no longer just about war or peace, it was about existence itself. "We can't defeat them with brute force," Hayes said, her voice trembling. "We must appeal to their logic. We must show them that we are more than pawns in their game." Rykov shook his head. "You think they care about logic? They're gods. They see us as insects. The only chance we have is to fight, to use every weapon we have, just like we did with the Ravagers." Rosas, ever the idealist, countered, "If we use our weapons, we risk everything. Humanity won't survive another war like that. We must seek another way." In the end, it was Voss's discovery that offered them a path. The gateway had not only awakened the Architects, it had also opened a channel, a way to communicate with them. Voss and his crew had been studying the Architects' technology for months, and they had found a weakness. The Architects could be reasoned with, but only if humanity proved it could evolve beyond its destructive nature. The final decision lay with President Hayes. The galaxy watched as humanity's leaders made their choice. Would they unleash their most devastating weapons against the architects, risking the destruction of reality itself? Or would they gamble everything on diplomacy, hoping that they could convince the architects that life, imperfect, chaotic, but full of potential, was worth preserving? In the final moments, President Hayes made her choice. Humanity would not fight, not this time. Instead, they would confront the architects with their greatest strength, their ability to change. As Hayes activated the gateway and initiated contact with the architects, the galaxy held its breath. For a brief moment, the entire universe seemed to pause. The architects, cold and calculating, listened as Hayes presented her case. She spoke not of humanity's strength or its military might, but of its flaws, its capacity for self-reflection, and its willingness to grow. She argued that their experiment was not a failure, but rather an evolution, a story still being written. For what felt like an eternity, the architects were silent. Then, without a word, they vanished, leaving the galaxy intact. The gateways they had created sealed shut once more, and the anomalies faded into nothingness. The architects had left humanity with one final message, inscribed in the stars. Your fate is your own now. With the architects gone, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. The Terran Union, shaken but still intact, emerged not as conquerors, but as the stewards of a new era of peace. President Hayes' decision to choose diplomacy over destruction became a beacon of hope for the rest of the galaxy, and the secret councils that had plotted against humanity disbanded, recognizing the wisdom in their choice. But humanity was forever changed. The knowledge that they had been pawns in a greater cosmic game lingered in their collective consciousness. They had seen the edge of annihilation, and they had turned back. In the years that followed, the Terran Union and the Galactic Federation began to rebuild, not as rivals, but as partners. New alliances were formed, new technologies were developed, and humanity's place in the stars was secured, not through fear, but through understanding. As Lieutenant Commander Voss and his crew sailed into the vast unknown once again, they knew one truth above all. The future was theirs to shape. The long night was over, and the dawn of a new era had begun. The galaxy was free, and for the first time, humanity stood not as the ultimate weapon, but as the guardians of a fragile, yet beautiful universe.